Good morning, all, and a kind welcome to the next session of the Expert Speak series. Today's talk is the sixth in the series to be presented by our esteemed guest speaker, Sri Tarak Dhurjati. Until now, we have had four well-known guests on the Expert Speak series: Dr. Ramanjaneyalu, Dr. Elango, Dr. Ashok Kalur, Dr. Sukhpal Singh, and Dr. Sudhir Kumar Goel, who have shared their enormous takeaways from outstanding careers in rural development, contributing to the theme of our documentary film Sankalpam. These national level leaders and experts are also contributing towards the development of the village business hub, a model to facilitate rural livelihoods and sustainable and effective rural enterprises like the FPOs. This village business hub shall be proposed in the docufilm and shall be dedicated to nation and the youth of the country who could participate as startups, entrepreneurs, agripreneurs to mitigate the widespread rural distress and fragile rural incomes distressing our villages. Indeed, it's an honor to have you, sir, on our Expert Speak series today, which is a pioneer to our in the intended documentary film Sankalpam to be directed by the acclaimed filmmakers duo Sri Ajay Kanchan and Sri Mahesh Bhatt. Sri Tarak Dhurjati has done his MBA PGDM from Indian Institute of Management Ahmedabad, PGDI from National Law School of India University Bangalore, MSc in Biotechnology from Indian Agricultural Research Institute, New Delhi, BSc in Agriculture from ANGR Agricultural University. He completed his Project Management Professional PMP PMI USA, Advanced Certification in IPR Management from Wipro. He was serving as Chief Business Officer, Samunnati Agro and Kamatan Farm Tech Private Limited. He has served as Senior Vice President, Nuzi Vidu Seeds from 2014 till 2021. He was a director, Grant Thornton India LLP from the year 2012 till 2014. Before that, he was principal consultant at PricewaterhouseCoopers from the year 2008 till 2012. He was also a scientist from Government of India in 1999 till 2006. His key achievements are: he implemented projects for commercialization of FPO engagement in food processing and agri inputs, sales and marketing leadership for 4,000 crore rupees SBU. He implemented project development function for sales and marketing effectiveness, also implemented ERP digital solutions for HR efficiencies. He led and delivered implementation of 2,500 crore rupees national level mission mode project with specialization in social sector, agribusiness and e-governance. He was a business representative for board matters, IPR litigations, CSR, PR and corporate communications. His key competencies are strategies, business coordination, operational excellence, implementation of sales and marketing effectiveness and digital solutions, regulatory and IPR affairs and industry affairs. Audience is awaiting to listen to you, sir. I request you to take over. Thank you.
Just a minute. Thank you so much for the introduction. So this presentation, this talk, I would be talking in general about the overall agrarian economy and where we are moving towards, what is the transformation that is happening across the country. And I'm not going to give any, solutions or I would like to kind of describe the perspective which is emerging, and the title. I would also like to make a small presentation. I would request the moderator to enable the sharing.
Done, sir.
Yeah. So thank you very much for having me, and good morning to all the participants. And thank you in particular to Suresh ji for bringing me as a part of this series. So agriculture, we are talking today about agriculture and the allied sectors, which is a very vast component of Indian economy in terms of both its contribution and both the participation of the various economic participants in this whole agrarian economy. So I would like to focus on few aspects rather than talk about what is happening in the sector. I would like to talk about the opportunities for transformation, and particularly how the changing landscape of agriculture is going to impact the Indian economy in the next one decade, you can say 5 years to a decade. So there are lots of things happening in isolated pockets, and some of them happening across the country. But at the end of the day, it's the innovation which happens in general, which is adopted by people in general, is what drives the whole economy, and it's what kind of gives a new foundation to the whole economy. So my PPT is it enabled? I think it's out. So the whole issue about Indian agriculture is like we see agriculture as something, as a special sector where the farmers are always caught in a kind of a vicious cycle, and then there is a need for whether it is government or whether it is private entrepreneurial support or private sector participation to come into agriculture and kind of lift the farmers from the vicious cycle they are stuck into. Although this is true, maybe 30 years back, 40 years back, currently, the way the context which is emerging is different. Agriculture, of course, is a special sector in terms of its exposure to the natural conditions and the risks and uncertainties related to the the variability, the variables which are linked to agriculture in terms of the climatic vagaries and in terms of the heterogeneity of the production system, in terms of soils, in terms of the lack of irrigation in the country. So agriculture remains special, but at the same time, the way it is transforming, the way it needs to be looked into, is agriculture also is a enterprise, is a business enterprise, and each farmer is an entrepreneur. So given that context, like all other entrepreneurs, farmers are also entrepreneurs, and they are the entrepreneurs which are who are exposed to the highest levels of risks and uncertainties. And that's the reason we see governments and we see a lot of support being given to farmers, not only in Indian context but all over the world. The kind of subsidies which are given to farmers with respect to inputs, with respect to fertilizers, with respect to electricity, with respect to water. So all these things are kind of specialized incentives given to farmers, given the tricky nature of the agriculture production systems in terms of the risk management and in terms of the uncertainties which are beyond the control of any other any entity basically. So that makes agriculture special compared to any other sector, whether it is a food processing sector or whether it is a manufacturing sector. So within agriculture, you see, if we see the topic today, I'll be talking about, as I mentioned, is business process transformations, business process interventions for commercial transformation of farmer collectives. So this is what is the topic I would be talking. I will be delving for the next half an hour to 45 minutes. And of course, since there are issues with the presentation, I will be directly talking about various facets, various aspects of this. So, as I mentioned, if you typically look from a microeconomic perspective of farm as a firm, an individual farm as a individual firm or a commercial entity, we see that in many of the aspects, these farms are operating at a suboptimal economic equilibrium. Suboptimal economic equilibrium in the sense they are yet to reach their full potential. They are always at a suboptimal level where despite several interventions or despite the knowledge that the different interventions can transform the suboptimal equilibrium to an optimal and super optimal equilibrium. So despite all these things, the farms still remain as at a suboptimal level. And we see that in many cases, agriculture is always a achievement of a kind of a profitable enterprise. Agriculture as a profitable enterprise always misses the bus in terms of various factors, whether it is lack of knowledge or whether it is lack of information or access to markets or access to capital, access to technology. So everyone is aware that agriculture is a special sector, but at the same time, when it loses this kind of when it moves towards an area where it's kind of its nature is special nature, it loses its significance. It will be more and more productive and profitable. So how we are going to move from a suboptimal equilibrium to an optimal equilibrium is what I would like to discuss today. So with an ultimate motive of making the individual farm as a firm, as a profitable enterprise. So individual farms in India, again, this is the biggest unique nature of Indian agriculture, where nearly 85 to 90% of our farms are small and they are less than hectare or less than 2 hectares, basically small and marginal farmers, or we call them smallholder agriculture. So the word smallholder is a favorite word for all, favorite word across the world for all the developmental institutions, and everyone talks about how to mitigate the challenges of smallholder agriculture. So the nature of smallholder agriculture keeps kind of put some constraints in terms of achieving economies of scale and scope. Yeah, so so the short point what I am trying to make is we need to come out of from being a highly prioritized sector with a lot of interventions which have happened over the last 70 years, including including it being considered as a priority sector, and where we have given a lot of SOPs and incentives to the farmers. We need to reach a stage maybe in 10 to 15 years where each farm is going to be an independent entity, commercial entity, which is highly profitable and which can function at high levels of efficiency and effectiveness without without great support from the government. Of course, there may be some supports. Even Western agriculture, there are a lot of supports. There can be some support in terms of certain subsidies, but the point, the whole point is we would all like to envisage a scenario where agriculture, each farmer is going to be a profitable entrepreneur, and he makes profit year on year like all other enterprises. And that scenario, when we visualize in next coming 10 to 15 years, that is what is the dream of the Gram Swaraj the true spirit of Gram Swaraj, which Mahatma Gandhi, talked about, in terms of villages being the most prosperous entities, most prosperous economically self-dependent systems in the country. So that's what we should move towards, rather than kind of an agriculture where we are always dependent, where the farmers are always dependent. All the farmers are always in the vicious cycle of victimhood, where farmers finally, uh, they commit suicides, or they are helpless, and they are they are not able to achieve their true potential, and they always function in a suboptimal economic equilibrium. So the thought process with which I am starting my presentation, Manasa, could you receive it?
I have shared it, sir. Are you able to see?
Oh, you already shared it. Okay, great.
Participants are able to see this, sir.
Oh, great.
Which slide should I move to?
Yeah, you can go into the first slide and make it put it on the
Slideshow?
slideshow mode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you can click. Yeah, click. Yeah. Next, second slide. Yeah. So I was talking about the slide where, we need to maybe in a fixed time period, like 70 years of post-independence in India, we had seen several interventions where we have seen green revolution, and then we have seen several market mechanisms. Then we have seen a lot of subsidies, and the most important point is the mindset. The mindset which has developed around agriculture is, the government will give sops, or the government is going to waive away the loans. There is going to be a mass loan waiver for the farmers. So instead of agriculture being an enterprise which is profitable, we are always in a mindset. The whole mindset about agriculture, surrounding agriculture, is that this is a field which perpetually requires support, and farmers are always in a vicious cycle of victimhood, where they are not able to manage the risks and uncertainties. And then that's the reason agriculture needs continuous support and subsidies, and it will never ever become a profitable enterprise. So this is the kind of mindset which we are into. So the point I'm trying to make is, at least when we have embarked on a path of transformation through interventions in technology, through interventions in business process transformation in agriculture. So we need to look at a future where farms become independent, profitable enterprises, and farmers are economically independent, economically prosperous, and like advanced economies where subsidies are given not to produce, because of high production, and because high production will give high supplies in the market. Farmers are incentivized not to produce, and they give subsidy for not producing rather than for producing. So this is the kind of future we should look at, rather than being in a perpetual vicious cycle. So what is the new context we are looking at? The new context we are looking at is a context where we see agriculture as a business process, as a business where and look at it from an ecosystem value chain perspective, where various incremental or disruptive innovations are implemented in agriculture. Incremental in the sense small innovations, and disruptive in the sense the big ones, the big bang innovations, and which will all help in transformation of agriculture in the next 5 to 10 to, maybe 5 years to, in a horizon of 5 years to 15 years or 20 years. Yeah, next slide, please. So when we talk about agriculture, we need to look at it today in a networked economy where, especially in the last 10 years, the transformation has taken place silently. And today we are all part of this transformation. Maybe a few of us realize, but few of us may not realize also. So what the transformation which happened in the last, we can say 10 years, is the explosion of internet. And almost today we have around 1.2 billion telephone connections, wireless telephone connections in the country. And out of which, of course, there are multiple connections, each person having 3 to 4 connections also. But largely around 40 to 45% of Indian rural economy is also connected, and people are utilizing internet. And the power of smartphones in the hands of farmers or their children or the educated millennials. I'll talk about the millennials are the people who are born after 2000. I think in India around 45% of Indian population is millennials, out of which 35% are in villages itself. So all these people have now started using smartphones. The power of information is is such enormous. Today in the hands of farmers there is information. There is information about how to do agriculture. And if you see the explosion of videos on YouTube, many of these small young farmers or their children are making videos on how to use fertilizers, what are the top 10 fertilizers they should use, what are the top 10 seeds they should use, what are the different pesticides they should use. So the relevance of agriculture advisory being provided by a third party has itself lost its importance in terms of a third party technical guy coming and giving advisory. Now it is all peer-to-peer advisory based on knowledge acquired by themselves through experience, and of course through the vast domains, public domain in internet. So the whole story is changing, where instead of a centrally located person giving information, not to say that central located person, technically qualified person is important, but the point I am trying to make is the peer-to-peer information exchange, which is traditionally the most credible information based on which farmers take decisions, is now accentuated by the use of technology. So the whole approach where we look at from a farm as a firm is now the perspective has changed from a independent single centralized approach to a decentralized network approach to a agri value chain approach. So the agri value chain approach is something which is emerging, where now farmers are directly getting connected to the market through a series of intermediaries. Maybe earlier the intermediaries are there were 10 different intermediaries. Now the chain has got compressed to 5 or 3, or 2 intermediaries are direct farms to the markets. So the value chain approach, the ecosystem approach, the agri value chain approach is something which is emerging for the future. That is the first point. And second point is how the value is distributed across the value chain. In terms of earlier, the value chain, a few participants in the value chain used to be the dominant participants, whether it is a trader, whether it is a distributor. They used to corner the entire gains from the value chain. So now the decentralized value chain is something where multiple participants, where the participants of the value chain get the value based on their contribution. And the whole approach is also, when you look into the future, where blockchain is something, the future being talked about in terms of technology, this whole value chain ecosystem perspective aligns with the blockchain. So this is what is going to be part of the future agriculture. And most importantly, it's about the equity rather than the equality. The equity, that is the contribution which is made by the participants of the value chain, is going to rule rather than everyone being equal in the value chain. So that is the second point. Third point I want to emphasize is it's not about efficiency, it's also about the effectiveness. So the difference is efficiency is is working on something where we produce more. It's becoming it's about generating higher productivity, producing more with less. But it's also about effectiveness. It's about kind of achieving the final objective in terms of what needs to be achieved rather than just producing what is required. So the example is like we need not produce tons and tons of rice or wheat. It's about producing what is actually required and what the value chain actually how the value chain is aligned to the demand perspective rather than just producing what is not required by the market. Similarly, economic versus social impact is also something which will become part of which will be an important component of this approach. And another important part of this approach is orchestrator versus dominant player. So if you see in any agri value chain, each commodity has a value chain, whether it's a tur value chain or a moong value chain or a mango value chain or a rice value chain. Each commodity has a value chain, and the value chain has 100 different participants. Not to say that each participant is essential in the market. Each market participant, they are not bad actually. So you see, it's not bad that we have so many intermediaries. Each intermediary has a role to play. But if their intermediary, who is sitting in the system, just for sake of ballooning the margin, then such intermediaries don't add value, but they just balloon the margin and they kind of artificially increase the prices in the market. So those kind of people who form a part of a cartel and then increase the prices within the value chain, these kind of players are the dominant players in the market who need to be eliminated. Rather than we require orchestrators of the value chain who don't have any important stake in the value chain, but who orchestrate the value chain to see that, like a musical symphony where an orchestrator helps bring out the best music through playing of various instruments, musical instruments. Similarly, a value chain is a system where each performs a role, like each performs a musical instrument, and the orchestrator is someone who actually brings out the symphony or the beautiful music. So ultimately what we require is an orchestrator rather than a dominant player who tries to garner the entire profit or majority of the profit. Finally, it's about seeing agriculture, as I mentioned earlier, from a victimhood to a victorhood, where the whole mindset of looking at agriculture should change, where the participants in agriculture, the farmers are not victims. They are the ones who are the best entrepreneurs, who need to get an enabling environment, which is what can happen through technology and the power of innovation. Yeah, next slide, please. So how do we unlock this value and how do we create a enabling environment for the farmer is what we would like to discuss. So the most important part in this whole system where we can enable, or where the technology will enable today, is about processing. Is about processing agriculture produce. See, if you generally see, farmers are entrepreneurs who produce raw material. Raw materials are something which need to get transformed into products which are required by the market. So even if you take a simple product like tur dal, so tur dal is the final product which is consumed by a consumer. Tur dal or rice or any agriculture commodity. So this is a very simple product where the tur, which is produced by the farmer, is moves through a chain of 5 to 6 intermediaries and ultimately ends up in a kirana shop or a retail supermarket where tur dal is purchased by the consumer. Now, if you see the tur dal economy, I will take the example of tur dal. And if you see certain pockets in India, like North Karnataka, where 3 to 4 districts, they produce, they are the heart of, the tur dal economy of India. The Bidar, the north, it's called as Hyderabad, Karnataka region, where districts like Gulbarga, Bidar, then Solapur in Maharashtra, Latur, and those 5 to 6 districts, they are the hub of tur dal economy of India. Now, if you see this, farmer produces tur and government support price maybe at 60 rupees or 55 to between 55 to 65 rupees a kilo. The tur is sold to the intermediaries, and then intermediaries and traders, they sell it to the processors, to dal mills. And then these dal mills, after factoring the processing losses, which is around 10 to 15% processing losses. So they ultimately sell the tur dal of different categories of tur dal, anywhere ranging from 80 rupees a kilo to around 95 rupees a kilo for the best quality tur dal. They sell it to the distributors, and then distributors sell to super distributors, sell to wholesalers, and finally we purchase tur dal anywhere ranging from 105 rupees or 100 rupees to 145 to 150 rupees a kilo. So the margins somewhere between 60 rupees for the farmer, factoring in the losses, processing losses, maybe around 70-75 rupees if you take at a net. Ultimately, we purchase, if you purchase the best class tur dal, maybe Tata Sampann brand or something, we are purchasing it around 140 to 150 rupees. So it's almost 80 to 100% value that is added to the raw material, which is tur, and final product, the higher grade premium product of 150 rupees a kilo. Of course, we have other products. I mean, tur, the common product average, on an average 110 rupees, 120 rupees also, tur dal a kilo is sold. So the point here is the technology and innovation. If you see the processing of tur dal need not be processed in a big city or in a district center. Tur dal can also be processed at the village itself, so that there are enormous opportunities for compressing the value chain. So I just gave an example of tur dal. Similarly, you have all the other pulses and oil seeds. So ultimately, many of these processing, unless it is a very complicated processing, if we can bring the processing to the village level itself or to a cluster of villages level itself, then there is no need to, we reduce a lot of, we can conserve and extract value, and also reduce a lot of handling and logistics and other costs which jack up the prices. So technology enabled processed clusters is something which we need to, which government is also looking at as one product, one district kind of market place, where different products are being promoted in each district of the country. So this is something which is going to create enormous value, where the processing clusters, which are groups of villages having the processing, whether it is a toll manufacturing or whether it is an individual processing cluster, where farmers bring the produce directly to the processing cluster, and where the processing cluster may be a third-party manufacturing center. And this revolution has already started, and many of the new age startups and new age companies are now directly getting things processed at the village level cluster itself, and which we are seeing especially in soybean, in pulses, where these big chains like Reliance or Big Basket, they are directly getting processed. This is going to multiply multifold in the future, and this technology enabled processing clusters along with innovations happening around it is something which will unlock a lot of value. And this is something where we need to look at in a very focused way in the future. The second important point is what is the theme of our Sankalpam, where we are looking for a place for the farmers, whatever you call it, whether it is a business hub or a go-to, ultimately it's a go-to place for the farmer, basically. A farmer for all his needs, whether it is an agri input need or a knowledge need or a processing need, there needs to be a go-to place for the farmer. Today, the go-to place, part of the go-to place is a mandi, a part of the go-to place is your agri input shop. Maybe a peer farmer is a go-to place. So this is where we are looking at the collectivization and where we are looking at the aggregation potential of farmers, where the government has come up with FPOs. Earlier to the FPOs, we had cooperatives in India since 1932. It's not that cooperatives have failed and now a government has brought a new concept of FPOs. So the point here is the whole FPO and the cooperative movement, which has again been functioning suboptimally, except in few sectors like dairy or in some of these sectors like dairy and some financial cooperatives. The collectives, farmer collectives have been successful, but largely, there are thousands and thousands of cooperatives in the country which function only for disbursing some subsidized inputs, and somehow they have not been commercially successful. And now comes FPOs since 2010 or 2012, which have been there are around 10,000 FPOs today. So the FPOs, the government of India is promoting as a kind of aggregation points where they become the go-to place for the farmers. So ultimately, the whole idea is the whole village or clusters of villages are, the FPO itself. They have to function as a place where farmers will get a comprehensive, they get services, so that the value which we are talking about, the unlocking of the value, the locked value which we are talking about, becomes reasonably realized. So the third thing, as I talked about, is compressing the value chain, especially the downstream activities coming to the village itself. Then fourth and most important is about the infrastructure, rural infrastructure. Rural infrastructure today, because of the highways, both rural highways and urban, the national highways, and the warehousing and logistics hubs, which are developing around these highways. This is something which in the next 10 years, which is going to happen, which will help not only in decentralizing the supply chain, but also the democratizing the supply chain, which along with the blockchain thing happening, it is something which we can look at 10 years down the line. So all these things will help in bringing out agriculture from the vicious cycles of poverty to more of prosperous cycle, where you have a decentralized system, where you need not have one big mandi in Guntur or Gulbarga. You will have several decentralized mandis and a lot of economic activity happening at these mandis. Yeah, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. So how do we make this happen? As I said, we need a kind of a visualization of value through business process transformation. What is this business process transformation is the core theme of today's discussion. So looking agriculture as a set of business processes, micro business processes, and various interlinked steps interacting with each other as a part of value chain is called as a business process flow in agriculture, like what happens in a chemical industry or a automotive industry. So similarly, we need to look at the agriculture production base, where you have millions of farmers, and these millions of farmers, if they are aggregated into thousands and thousands of FPOs, and these FPOs are farmer collectives, basically. Farmer collectives are related collectives like self-help groups, women entrepreneur collectives like self-help groups and cooperatives. So this is what, these are all the production systems where raw materials are produced, and these raw materials are connected to processing clusters, and these processing clusters are connected to the markets. Now, the most important point here is the processing clusters and the farmer clusters, they need to be aligned to what market requires, rather than farmers produce what they want because government is giving them subsidy, and market is not able to manage the glut of what is dumped into the market. So now what market wants, it should be the other way around. The pull should come from the market rather than the push from the supply system. So today you have, when we see the tomato glut, or wheat and rice, which is kind of dumped into the FCI godowns and the public distribution system, where it gets rotten. So it should be other way around, where crop planning happens, and based on what market requires and how much the market requires, farmers produce clusters of FPOs, and farmers produce in line with the requirements of market as per the quality required by the market. And then the whole system, the whole pull comes from the market rather than push from the supply system. So from a supply side economy, we will move towards a demand side economy, where we need to visualize the whole visualization of value through business process transformation happens through the blockchain systems, which will develop in future, which will vouch for traceability and the credibility of the transactions. So these are certain ideas which will transform the Indian agriculture. And as I mentioned, these hubs, business value hubs or business hubs, village business hubs, talked about earlier also. And what we have worked in the last 1 year, we worked on something called as Krishi Value Hubs. And we have developed pilots in 7 states of the country. So these Krishi Value Hubs are something which, of course, these were experiments done to see how the aggregation potential of the farmers can be realized. So Krishi Value Hubs are something which I talked about, like a go-to place for farmers, where the value of Krishi can be unlocked. Today, the value of Krishi is locked at several places. So we need to unlock the value of Krishi, or value of agriculture. So these Krishi Value Hubs enable such thing to happen by providing market linkages to the farmers, the demand-based market linkages to the farmers, by providing the finance, quick finance through any kind of financial institutions, then agri inputs and advisory services, then the processing capabilities at the hub itself, and the micro enterprises or micro retail, which surround the Krishi Value Hub, the economic, hinterland of the Krishi Value Hub. So can you go back? So the Krishi Value Hub is something which is envisaged as the future, where this go-to place can be a FPO itself functioning as a Krishi Value Hub, or groups of FPOs where one FPO will be an anchor FPO which will function as a Krishi Value Hub, and all the other FPOs in the catchment area can subscribe to the Krishi Value Hub. So here is where the entire value transformation happens, not only in terms of processing capabilities, in terms of supply of input, supply of finance, in terms of sale of agricultural produce to the buyers, and also in terms of sale of the finished products through micro retail enterprises through the within the rural area. So this is what is envisaged as a Krishi Value Hub. So on this, if you visualize, let us take a village, let us take a district where there are some 50 FPOs, 60 FPOs in a couple of talukas of a district. So a Krishi Value Hub can be at a place, at one location, where you can see and that, let us say that village, they are very good at production of vegetables. At the same time, they may be good at production of some commodities like pulses and oil seeds. Now, the Krishi Value Hub, which is located, which is catering to some 10 to 20 FPOs, can have a processing unit for vegetables, maybe tomatoes or bendi or whatever, maybe a processing unit, and along with a few other processing units for commodities like pulses. And then the products produced at the Krishi Value Hub may go to the city, and at the same time, the micro enterprises, small kirana kind of micro enterprises run by women entrepreneurs or unemployed youth, they can also take from the Krishi Value Hub and sell in the surrounding small towns and villages. So no need that everything is bought by biggies like Reliance or some big ninja cart comes and buys from them. So the whole rural value chain can be developed around the Krishi Value Hub itself. So in addition to that, the agri input companies, the agri input companies are actually looking forward for such new innovations to happen. And today, almost all the agri input companies, not only in seeds, fertilizer and pesticides, but also animal feeds, dairy related companies, all these companies, they are looking at directly connecting to the rural, such rural hubs, where they also want to compress the value chain and kind of unlock the value and help farmers move from a suboptimal to an optimal equilibrium. So all these things can happen through the power of technology, and the technology which I'm not talking about, talking about in this presentation because the time is limited. But technology is evolving across three different landscapes. The first, three different dimensions. The first is the front-end dimension, which may be a smartphone, which may be a POS device, or which may be a QR code enabled money transaction. So the front end is what is visible to us. So this is what has exploded in the market. But what needs to be done more is for the middle tier, which middle tier and the back end. So the middle tier and the back end are yet to develop in Indian system. The middle tier will, in the future, will be largely controlled by cloud-based technologies and the blockchain we are talking about. And the back end is what is going to be the physical, underlying physical infrastructure. Because just by making an e-commerce website, we can't do transformation. What is required is both physical infrastructure. On top of it, you have an enabling digital infrastructure. So what we see today in terms of agriculture transformation is the front end in terms of a lot of smartphone apps, in terms of some enam platform, in terms of all these things happening. But what is what needs to be developed in the coming future is the middle tier, which is the cloud-based technologies to be deployed in agriculture, and the blockchain, which needs to be built into agriculture, and the backend. Backend is more of a physical infrastructure. So ultimately, we talk about without a strong underlying foundation of physical infrastructure, there is no meaning for digital infrastructure. Although digital infrastructure accelerates the innovation, but it is more about the physical and the whole physical system which needs to be developed. So with that, I would like to I would like to say that the whole system in agriculture is not at ripe in terms of building of physical infrastructure, and the middle tier, most important middle tier, which is developing through a lot of innovations and disruptions, with both incremental innovations and disruptions happening in the next 5 to 10 years. And most of these innovations are going to come through these fintech cloud-based platforms, which will open up finance and capital and technology to the farmers, who can then function as independent entrepreneurs, take their decisions, independent decisions, sell the produce, produce the commodities, what is required by the market, and directly connect to the markets. So all these things can happen through an integrated approach of development of all these three tiers, both the back-end physical infrastructure, then the middle tier of both digital and physical infrastructure, and of course the front end, the exploding front end, which we are seeing today. So with that, I think my time, we have 1 hour time. So with that, I think I will end my presentation. As I told, this is more of a very generic presentation I wanted to talk about, with an emphasis that we need not look at agriculture. Last 70 years context has been different, and last 20 years is like a flux where things are changing rapidly and so dynamically. So it's about looking at agriculture, unshackling the agriculture from victimhood to a kind of an independent sector of an economy, which functions based on the principles of profit and also principles of both the economic and social impact. So thank you so much. We can have discussion now.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. We can have a Q&A session. Suresh sir, would you like to have some questions? Ask some questions.
Yeah. It was very enlightening, Tarakji. From victimhood to victorhood. Can you hear me?
Yeah, Sureshji.
Yeah, it's wonderful. You highlighted several crucial things, and your perspective is that of a 35,000 feet perspective on the whole issue, where you have taken a good look at the forest itself rather than the tree. And the whole point of this film is to give the viewer or the audience, especially those who are connected with technologies, who are enablers, who have put their energies in the so-called IT field today. They're talking about apps and cloud-based technologies, IoTs, etc. A part of that energy, or the focus of that energy, needs to be in developing a full integrated chain, like you just mentioned. There are a few beautiful things that you mentioned. One was, I think, what Sudhir, our IIM professor, Dr. Sukhpal Singh was talking about, neo-Fordism. Just in time, depending on the market requirement, you put things together, create or produce whatever is the requirement of the market. So diversification, trying to decentralize things, it's all part of the neo-Fordism, I think that professor was also talking about, which is an excellent concept, because we are trying to go parallel with what the other fields have tried to basically leverage the technologies. So agriculture needs to do that. You're bang on that. And you're absolutely right about peer-to-peer, which is very effective. Only thing is peer-to-peer needs to actually come on a platform. There is no platform as such that will really make things much easier, because today, I'm sorry to bring in examples, there's a lot out there in the YouTube. Some of it is misguided. Some of it is, like a tunnel vision. People do talk about the air. Everybody has become, sort of mentors on the YouTube today. They do a little bit here and there, and they think, this is the way to do things. So we need to have this peer. I see a lot of YouTube videos where something is being done, an operation is carried out. I should never ever assume that, based on a YouTube video, I should, take things into my hands and try to do something. So this is where some kind of your facilitation centers are required, but it need not be in the physical space. Today, what I got to know from you is this. Already there have been several attempts in terms of creating a business value hub at the villages. You spoke about Krishi value hubs. I would be more interested to get all the details from you. The next thing is, like, instead of having a physical structure, if this can go online, you're talking about the middle tier and the back end, and the front end has already been, the space has been taken up. So we would be interested to see if we can bring people together to create the middle tier and the back end that you spoke about. Back end being the physical thing, which is much more capital intensive. At least we can move on to the middle tier. This is where your Krishi Value Hub or village business hubs can come in, and they can connect a lot of people together on the platform. So instead of making it physical, we can go online and enable all this through cloud technologies and what do you call this, IoT and blockchain that you spoke about. Very interesting. So Sankalpam should make a clarion call for the middle tier is one of the things that I would look at, and talk about people coming into this area, this space. So we need to actually showcase in the film the various potential, the kind of, you spoke about unlocking the value of agriculture. There's a tremendous potential for monetization. Every aspect of the service that can be, spoken to and pointed to the youth of the country, so that, they get motivated here. And otherwise, I think I found your thing a brilliant exposition of exactly what the future holds for the country and how much of potential is waiting there to be unleashed. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over without taking much time. Thanks for your time, and I'll hand over to the guests to come up with their questions and interact with you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, Sureshji. I just want to make a few points. I have deliberately kept this very generic, but I'm presently working on something related to individual innovations in agriculture in this whole ecosystem. So we can have, at least there are 100 different companies. Today you have, today is, the world of unicorns. So in agri, not a single unicorn has come out so far. Although you have 40-50 unicorns coming in other sectors like Fintech and other sectors. Maybe this year, in coming next 3 years, you will have a lot of unicorns coming from agri sector also. And a lot of innovation. I have not touched upon the individual innovations being done by startups or even government. So there are several, innovations. If you take example, I can take names. Each of these startups have kind of done some innovation or other, which I have not touched upon in this subject, in this presentation. Because I'm talking more about a philosophy, I'm talking more about a kind of a mindset change and kind of future what we are looking at, rather than what a particular company has done. So I just want the audience also to understand that I have not, talked about what a particular company has done in dairy, or what a particular company has done in a fruit and vegetable value chain. Those things, we have a lot of information in public domain, and so those things can be discussed. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to interacting with you on this and taking it further when we develop an actual model, Tarakji. Recently, I've had two people connected to each other. Dr. Elango was building model villages in India, in Tamil Nadu. He's been a guest of honor in countries like Pakistan and Sri Lanka and all over the world. He set up a solid infrastructure and leadership and training programs for how to cultivate, how to create a good village, a happy village, a healthy village first. All these enterprises, all these business processes are all layered on top of a healthy village first. The farmer family should be, having a decent, supply of water, all this sanitation and all this. So there's a lot that is going on. And Dr. Ashok Alur, who's also from Karnataka, who's the director of Center of Excellence, has connected with Dr. Elongo. They're taking it forward to bring in, sort of transfer the knowledge and transfer whatever, takeaways into other parts of India. So I think I will be in touch with you. We'll take this further, sir. I would be getting in touch with you very soon. And without taking much time of the esteemed audience, over to the audience, please.
Okay, shall I ask the first question? Yeah. So this is Umanath. Wonderful presentation, Tarakji. I like the tone, very optimistic, and just a question here. As a bystander for the last, I think last 1 year, I was a bit confused. I mean, there was one side which said that the farm laws are important to improve the lot of the farmer, and there was the other side which said that the farmers are being exploited. So, what is your view on this, sir?
Yeah, thank you, Umanaji. Nice to connect with you. See, the whole, there are two parallel things happening. There's two parallel universes. One universe is government, and the second universe is a universe where it's a free market. The second universe is a free market. Like, for example, government is only an enabler and facilitator and kind of brings in, sets the rules of the game. So, for example, let us see the rules of the game set up by the government to certain extent. Let us take the example of IT. I'll come to your answer through what I'm talking about. So the government has set some rules of the game for IT, and then beyond certain point, when technology explodes, government has no role to play. So similarly, smartphones, government gave permissions to bring smartphones into the country, beyond which, the whole ecosystem which developed around smartphones, whether it is apps, whether it is Fintech applications, whether it is QR code based transactions, that is something just like a monster. So similarly, government wanted to kind of decentralize with respect to farm laws, kind of do something much ahead of time, actually, without doing proper preparation. So when it unleashed the genie from the bottle, the time was not ripe, actually. So when the whole system, agri marketing system, is kind of dictated by an APMC mandi based mechanism, the government went 2 to 3 steps ahead and kind of went through these farm laws, which have caused kind of a lot of which led to a lot of unnecessary furor and then government backtracking. So why did this happen? Just because the farmers in particular states, especially in North Indian states, 3 to 4 states of North India, here the whole system is linked with respect to rice wheat cultivation. The rice wheat rotation, what happens in these few states of Punjab, Haryana and Western UP, where the whole economy is linked to it, and the farm laws which are being brought by the government, they are directly in conflict with respect to disturbing the whole economy there, Punjab, Haryana and Western UP. So that is the reason there was a whole resistance only in that pocket, and then the time was not ripe there and government had to backtrack. So if the reform process is also done keeping in view taking into view the major stakeholders who are the farmers, then this whole thing could have been implemented smoothly and rolled out smoothly. So I think this reform will in future, this will be led by technology itself, and there is no need for reform. In the next 5 to 6 years, just because of the disruptions happening in technology, there is no need for, these kind of formulas also to come. And directly farmers will get connected to the markets. And then with the 5G technology coming and with the kind of metaverse and other things people are talking about, and the blockchain systems which you are talking about, maybe in 5 to 10 years, even without reform, people will start getting into a mode where the three formulas which government thought about, which were in fact good formulas, but could not be implemented because of the rigid market ecosystem prevailing in the north, in the three to four states in the northern part of India, and which has hijacked the whole reform process, where even in southern states and even in Bihar, those things were not relevant. But as you said, like a bystander, you have seen that the farm laws have been repealed now, just because the existing system doesn't want them now, because they were a little ahead of time and they did not uh, take the key stakeholders into consideration. I mean, they should have taken they could have taken the stakeholders, the traders and the farmers, linked to them before actually kind of enacting these laws. So that's my take on it.
Thank you, sir.
Anyone else?
Tarak ji,
Yes, I want to ask one question.
Yeah, Vikramji.
Yeah, I'm actually a practitioner in agri businesses as well as professor, and I am doing my research on Industry 4.0 with reference to the analytics.
Okay.
So recently, I appreciate what you said is correct. The farm laws or digitization or 5G technologies will bring the change. But being, you can say, this is a explicit knowledge we are talking that is available in the books, or you can say the reports. But tactical knowledge is not accepting this, because what I observed, the tactical knowledge implementation of IIM, it is taking very, you can say, the low response to the highly perishable items in the agriculture business. And is it as you rightly said, it is not, we are going too ahead of the time. So my question, the intermediaries, normally the people, they are criticizers from, you can say, the media, or you can say from all, you can say, the sources. Intermediaries are criticizers, but why the government, or you can say the institutions, they are not thinking, they are adding the value? Because if you will study the Michael Porter value chain, the primary activities consider the part of marketing. So how to, you can say, the change, the intermediaries or service providers are not inflating the rates of the market? So can you share your views on this?
Yeah, very good question. So in a market where every market participant, whether it is an intermediary or whether it is a processor, everyone has a role to play. So we also need not see intermediaries as evil. Some of the intermediaries, they add value. They do bulking, they do debulking, they kind of create utility value and place value, utility value and time value for the commodity. And especially if the intermediary, as I mentioned earlier, if he doesn't provide value, he is just an additional
Cost.
additional cost by just adding margin. Then that is, such kind of intermediaries are non-value adding intermediaries. But in general, every intermediary, either it is a broker in the market or whether it is a kind of aratia, they also add value. So we need to see that this whole intermediary chain and in view of whatever industry 4.0 and other things we are talking about, this intermediary value chain, why the formulas failed is actually why, because this intermediary value chain were not taken into confidence by the government.
Yes,
They
sir.
thought, intermediaries don't add value. Intermediaries add a huge value, and everyone sees them as evil, kind of participants in the market. But intermediaries become evil when they corner, when they do malpractices, and they corner most of the profit, and when they kind of make farmers part of a credit cycle where farmers become dependent on them for credit. So then they become evil arahatiyas,
Yes.
evil
Yes,
kind
sir.
of
Yes.
what is shown in the movies. So, but
Yes.
in general, if you go to any mandi, intermediaries do add value in terms of bulking of the commodity, in terms of again debulking, and providing them to wholesalers and then to retailers, and then holding the commodity as if they hoard it, it becomes evil. But if they hold it based on market requirement, it is a job of the intermediary. So now, as per your question, the how technology can the emerging technologies can make these intermediaries as fair participants in the value chain is what we need to look at. So as I mentioned, the new technologies which are coming, which are emerging, I have seen few startups working on these kind of technologies where they are developing these transactions and traceability platforms. The transactions and traceability platform will help the farmers, and the entire, it will provide a visibility across the value chain. So it will show us what kind of inventory is held in the value chain at what point, and what is the value of inventory at each of these points, and it will also provide this traceability back to the producer. And this is what is exactly what I'm calling as a middle tier. The middle tier is nothing but a transactions and traceability platform, whether it is hosted on a cloud or whether it is hosted on a blockchain on a cloud. So this is what is going to bring a huge transformation in Indian agriculture. So if at the back end, you will have all these warehouses, cold chains. When you talk about fruit and vegetable value chain, where the highly perishable commodities of fruits and vegetables or milk, these become part of the value, the back end platform, which is the physical infrastructure. The central, the core middle tier is what is called as transactions and traceability platform, which is a digital platform essentially. And this is what will also ensure quality of the produce. Based on the quality of the produce, the value will be decided. So this is what your industry 4.0 actually need to look at, building such platforms on a pilot scale for particular commodities, especially in fruits and vegetables, and then scaling it up to the on a large scale. And this is what is being done by certain startups in this space, who are getting a lot of funding. You might know, certain startups like Ninja Cart, or these are the ones who are investing, or Way Cool, Ninja Cart, then even certain new age startups which are coming into this space. So all these, but there is a kind of incubation period. There is a kind of a journey which these startups need to take before these things happen. And coming to ENAM market, today ENAM market has around 1,000 plus mandis connected to it. Out of 5,000 to 6,000 mandis in the country, the ENAM market has around 1,000 mandis connected. And out of which a few commodities has been successful, but largely this ENAM market in few states, few commodities, like in states of Rajasthan, UP, in certain commodities which are connected to NCDEX commodity markets, like seed, spices, or turmeric. Few of these things have been successful, but largely the ENAM market is still yet to see its success, because it's only an information platform today rather than a transactions and traceability platform. So this is what is my take about the middle tier and the question asked by you. And another point I would like to mention is Karnataka has gone much ahead in terms of its own IIM. It is called as Rashtriya REMS in Karnataka, which is much more successful than this nationwide IIM market. In Karnataka, all the mandis are connected to the REMS, and around 4 to 5, more than 45,000 traders are also connected to the REMS in Karnataka. This is what is a model which in future with participants, with more and more private sector participants, it can become hugely successful.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. Because what I observe, consumer behavior to pay something for agri products, they are not. They are having some restrictions. Simple example: to pay 100 rupees for kg per tomato, they are not ready to pay. The cost of farmers is increasing in the pesticides. If you look now's current scenario, pesticides input costs are very high. Transportation costs are also included, and consumers are not ready to pay for particular cost. And agriculture products, they are having definite cycle period. What happens when they are coming at beginning? There is a good demand, and at maturity stage there is a huge, you can say, mismanage between supply and demand, and suddenly the product prices drop down. So how the government cannot they ask the pesticide companies or to reduce the cost of pesticides, or can they give some facilities to tempos or trucks which are carrying the petrol or diesel from farm end, so that the cost of farmer will reduce and their incomes will increase. Now, yes, I agree. The government has initiated organic farming, which is a part they are reducing the pesticides cost. But how? Because farmers are facing a big problem because they are not understanding the technology platforms. Someone middleman now technology people are going, still they are not happy. So how to solve this problem? The farmers are also facing the problems, and same thing the government and middle people also they're facing the problems. What is happening recently? There are many players introduced in the market, and benchmarking is still APMC. Like if private players are going at farm gate, what they are saying, if you are getting 60 rupees per kg in mandi, I will give you 65. But he's selling at the 200 rupees. So how to solve this problem? Middle, they are coming. Yes, private players. Just now you said Ninja card, they are coming. But are they sharing the right information at what time they are purchasing cost and selling cost?
Yeah, I got your question. So the whole the technology what we are talking about is something which the first and foremost thing what it does is it reduces information asymmetry between markets and the producers. So whether it is a private player or a government player, see ultimately when there is a transparency in transaction and when there is a symmetry of information across the market participants, then the major problem of information is solved. Number two, it's not about reduction of price of pesticides or any agri input. One should not aim at reduction of prices. We should aim at use of right input at the right time at the right place for the right price. So irrespective of what is the price of agri input, if it solves the problem of the farmer, then that is still a value to the farmer. Today, the biggest challenge for the farmers is not the price of agri inputs, but the cost of labor. In certain crops, more than 50% of the cost of cultivation is the cost of labor. The scarcity of labor, the quality and cost of labor is something which is very big. In many villages, farmers have become poorer than farm labor. This is a big challenge today because the prices have increased. The farm labor prices have increased because of other activities and because of the Pradhan Mantri, the Manrega activities. Everyone, the farmers have become poorer here. So the whole issue here is agri inputs, whether it is seeds, pesticides, or fertilizers. the right quality of agri inputs have to be utilized rather than the farmers need to look at the price of agri inputs. Any subsidized agri input will only give a poor quality agri input and later poor productivity to the farmer. So if a pesticide, which is a costly pesticide, needs to be utilized for controlling a particular pest, that has to be utilized, but based on the right information. So just spraying something will not solve the problem, and it will only reduce the productivity of the crop. So the whole issue about thinking, getting cheap inputs for the farmer itself, the whole idea and the whole perspective itself, according to me, is not correct. We should see that farmers become empowered with the right information so that they buy the right input and get the right results from it, means higher productivity from it, is what I see. And coming to your tomatoes, 100 rupees, and again the margin, higher margin taken by the trader rather than the farmer. And at times tomatoes are 2 rupees and they are thrown on the roads because it doesn't make sense for transporting it to the market, because the transport price is more than the price is sold in the market, and just farmer throws them in the to cows or on the road. So these things is what the technology and the model I talked about addresses. If there is a processing cluster of tomatoes which makes pickles, which transform these tomatoes into a higher value form, whether it makes tomato puree or whether it makes sauces at the village level itself, where the shelf life of tomato is increased from 3 days to 4 days, from 4 days to 4 months or 6 months or a year, then your value addition at the village level itself is happening, and the farmer will get a higher price. If the group of FPO farmers, if they sell tomato puree in bottles rather than selling along with selling fresh tomatoes, then there itself farmer, the problem of unlocking the value happens, and the whole problem of crossing that suboptimal equilibrium to higher equilibrium in economic terms happens. So this is my take on your question, Mr. Vikrant.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Vikram. Mr. Arvind, I think you wanted to come in. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Tarak, good afternoon. This is Arvind. Previously, I was working with in agriculture and textile. Now I'm in telecom domain. So your talk was really very informative. Many things are there. I think I should discuss, but this is not the platform, not the time we can discuss. But just I would like to touch upon one specific subject which I've come across, because you are having good expertise in the seeds management also. I was looking in the jute cultivation actually, and previously from the Ministry of Textiles. So in the jute cultivation, we are the second largest jute growers. I mean, jute cultivation in the world, with respect to Bangladesh also. But what I could say is that the jute seeds, the quality of the jute seeds, as you said, that the inputs of the agriculture should be having a more quality. So the jute farmers, I think it is with all the farmers generally, not only with jute. I could see the certified seeds, the quality of the certified seeds are not reaching the farmers, number one. And also the inherent value of the seed. The seeds will have so many varieties, right from the foundation. I mean, like germination, foundation, and they do the bulking. Correct. So what used to happen, the actual seeds which are having more productivity. If you see these CRIJAF and ICR, so many good research institutes, they have a very big gene banks with them, all different qualities. But to get the seed to reach the farmer, a new variety, and farmer will also not readily agree to use it. Okay. So it took for us almost 5 years to reach the high yield variety jute seed in the country. Okay, so with such focused thing we could do, there will be so many other sectors where I still see the farmers are disconnected with the good high yield variety seeds available in across various commodities. Number one. So anyhow, I'll not talk much, but I was really attracted the way you are discussing bringing the technology forefront and connecting the backend infrastructure. Just I would like to know, using this blockchain technology which is evolving, like how you can basically like create a big value in this seed supply distribution, not just for the jute I'm talking about all the different agriculture commodities we have in India. Can you say something on the practical thing, how we can try to basically manage things? Because we have still tried several times, it doesn't happen. So many interpreters will be there. Yes, some interpreters will add value, some interpreters will hold, some fellow will basically hold it, and a lot of spurious seeds get into the market, and it takes very difficult process to cut down such kind of systems in this seed supply chain. So just I would like to hear from you if you can give some idea on using these technologies and trying to bridge this gap on delivering quality seeds, high yield seeds to the farmers. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for your question, Arvindji. Nice to get connected with you. See, seed, one has to understand, as you rightly said, across all the agri inputs, whether it is pesticide, fertilizer, irrigation, farm machinery, all these are all agri inputs. Across all the agri inputs, seed is the primary and most fundamental agri input. Why it is primary input is, it is on the plant which emerges from the seed, all other agri inputs are applied, right? So, and what do you mean by seed? Seed is not, seed is actually a representation of a plant variety. Seed is something which encapsulates a plant variety. So when you say a seed, jute seed, it is, or a rice seed, it is a seed of a particular plant variety. And a particular plant variety has particular characteristics. So the most important part for any agriculture, and where the at least 25 to 30% of the productivity, the genetic potential is decided in a plant variety, is the most important input in agriculture. So when we are talking about seeds of high yielding varieties, so all these seeds of high yielding varieties started since 1960s and 1950s. So whatever we say, talk about green revolution is nothing but the conjunctive use of high yielding plant varieties in wheat and rice, along with fertilizers and irrigation. That is nothing but green revolution. So what happened during green revolution was, earlier they were using certain varieties which were low productivity, low yield. Now we started using dwarf varieties which were having higher yield. Similarly, in other crops also these things happened, and hybrid varieties of plants, hybrid seeds, which have higher yield potential, farmers started adopting them, especially in maize, especially in millets, and then followed by rice. And then the yields of the crops increased in this country. And today we still don't have high yielding varieties in pulses, especially in all the pulses, dals and pulses and oil seeds. That is the reason we still are dependent on imports on vegetable oils and pulses from outside. So the most important part is, seed is which determines the productivity potential of a plant. So now coming to utilization of technologies to provide, as you rightly said, in jute, most of the jute varieties farmers and most farmers use are their farm saved seed, and some certified seed people use. But one very important factor which we need to understand is, in India, still in most of the crops, farmers use farm saved seeds. Farm saved seeds in the sense, when they produce some 10 quintals, 1 quintal they keep aside as seed for the next season, and rest of the 9 quintals they sell it in the market. So in most of these crops, which are self-pollinated crops, farmers use these farm saved seed, whose genetic potential is diluted every subsequent generation, and they get lower yields. So there is a need now for farmers to shift to use seeds which are produced generation after generation, specifically as seed purpose, not as grain purpose. So the first point is farmers, the tendency of farmers to buy seeds with high genetic potential and with high genetic purity and physical purity is increasing. So this trend is increasing, and that is the reason now more and more farmers, instead of going for farm saved seed, they are going outside and buying seed in the market, which have higher quality. That is number one, higher quality and also higher genetic potential. Number two, Government of India also is coming along with private sector. It is trying to build a kind of a traceability platform for seed industry. This traceability platform is something which will help in kind of handling the unscrupulous operators, fly-by-night operators of seeds who sell spurious seeds to the farmer. So they are trying to build this QR code based system where when the QR code is scanned, you will know directly from which farm, which bulk, which lot of foundation seed, from which company, which lot it is coming. So they are trying to build this entire traceability, national seed traceability system. I think they started this in 2020, and they have set some deadlines for the seed companies to comply with building this traceability platform in the next coming 2 to 3 years. I think once this seed traceability system is implemented, then the problem of spurious seeds will drastically come down. That is the second thing. Third important thing is, R&D and developing plant varieties, whether it is by public sector, whether you talked about the CRISAF, which supplies jute seeds, and some of the universities, state agriculture universities, which are part of public sector, or the private sector seed companies which are working. There are several private sector seed companies which are also, developing, they are breeding plant varieties with high genetic potential for producing high yields. And not only high yields, but also high quality seeds. I mean, high quality products in terms of, let us say in jute, it is the fiber length or retting ability, or, the quality of fiber. There are several fiber parameters in terms of knotting and other things. So there are several quality and quantitative parameters which are being developed through R&D by both public sector and private sector. And especially in jute, the private sector participation is also increasing, with private sector companies bringing about high yielding hybrids, high yielding jute varieties, and not only in jute, in all other crops also. And if you see in crops like vegetable crops, especially, the private sector is dominating, where most of the high yielding, 100% of, you can say 95 to 99% of seeds used in vegetable sector today are from private sector, because of the high yields and the high quality attributes provided by the private sector. So only in cereals like rice and wheat, etc., you have farm saved seed and the government, and some pulses, you have government sector providing these seeds, because private sector doesn't have the potential and investment capacities compared to government sector. So the sector itself is emerging in terms of traceability, in terms of use of technology, in terms of using R&D, in terms of bringing some biotechnology kind of tools for kind of fast tracking the breeding programs, which have a long gestation period. So I think in the coming 5 to 10 years, definitely we will have great results in terms of choice for the farmer with respect to different plant varieties, the seeds of different plant varieties. Yeah.
Hello,
Thank
sir.
you, Mr. Arvind. Yeah, Shubham, quickly. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, sir, you mentioned about the green revolution and how it brought high yielding variety of seeds in the access to the farmers. But that is also, I feel, one of the reasons why we are seeing a lot of wastages happening in the food FCI, right? With the FCI, because with the high yield amount of yield, high quantity, the storage capacities are getting more choked, and with that, like the government is bound to pay the farmers the MSP, but there is no demand. So then in a way, high yielding varieties are choking the storage systems on one side, and high yielding varieties also exploit and deteriorate the soil quality. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, that's true. So that is the reason we need a lot of interventions to, come out from the trap of rice wheat ecosystem. I mean, rice wheat, we need to do more of crop diversification. We need to do more of enterprise diversification. In addition to cropping, we also need to look at other agri and allied sectors like fisheries, poultry, fishery, dairy, all these things, integrated farming. So it's more importantly, rather than non-perishable commodities like rice and wheat, which can still be used for processing. Rice and wheat, a lot of rice and wheat goes into animal feeds, and even though they are spoiled, also there is no, it's not a big issue. But most of the biggest losses happen in perishable commodities, that is fruits and vegetables. Almost 30%, 25 to 30% of the post-harvest losses happen in fruits and vegetables. That is where the interventions are required. That is where you need rural infrastructure in terms of warehousing, in terms of cold chains, in terms of conversion, transforming the perishable products into products of higher shelf life. And this is where interventions are required, and this is where I think a lot of investments are happening also.
Okay, so sir, my next question would be, like you mentioned blockchain quite a few times throughout the talk, and so just wanted to know, even I'm looking for people who are working in the blockchain in agri specifically, because I am also one of the co-founders of one of the agri startups. So are you aware of any startup or any community or team which is working on blockchain intervention in agriculture?
Yeah, there are a couple of pilots going on. There is one blockchain which is pure play. There is one which is already under implementation as a trading and commodity marketing platform, which is called as WHRLL. If I might have heard about it, maybe you are part of it, I don't know. So it's about warehouse receipt finance. They do this on blockchain basis. There are other blockchain experiments happening by both public sector, by universities, and certain joint ventures. But entire blockchain, the even understanding of blockchain, even it's in a very primordial stage at this point of time. But it is a buzzword everyone talks about, given the potential it has, and given the success in the financial markets with Bitcoin and other currencies, other things happening built around blockchains. But it can play a significant role in agriculture. I would say it is in a very, very incipient stage. A couple of companies, as I told, WHRRL, RLL, Warehouse Receipt Finance Limited or something like that, which is a pure play blockchain player, which is, I think, which is developing currently. That's what I have seen. In addition to that, many other companies are doing pilots, including IITs, including this university, Central University, Hyderabad. All these people are doing pilots around agriculture. So I don't know other significant players other than this.
Okay, so last question, sir. So just wanted to know, you're part of Kamathan and Samunati, two of the very great organizations. So I just wanted to know what are the things, what are the projects you generally do being part of these two companies?
No, I've just come out to start my own system. I was part of these two companies.
Okay.
Now, in Samunati, basically Samunati is a non-banking finance company and a trading company, commodity trading company, and their focus is to work on FPOs and farmer collectives. So they started building an entire financial ecosystem around FPOs and farmer collectives. So they have been successfully working with FPOs through helping them generate market linkages for sale of the commodities, in addition to providing them working capital loans for developing various initiatives, including processing, including developing their own infrastructure. And in addition to that, they are also building a digital platform which will help in bringing all these things together, like convergence of the value chain.
Okay, sir, for the time constraint, because of the time constraint, I'm not able to ask more questions, but would like to interact with you
Thank you so
offline.
much. Yeah, we will keep interacting, and definitely I would love to interact with young entrepreneurs like you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mansa, I
yes.
think you can conclude.
Yeah, I would request you to give the vote of thanks, sir.
Yeah. I think all has been said, much has been said in these last couple of hours, and I'm ever grateful for all the information and the expertise that has been shared with the audience. And I'm looking forward to taking your ideas about the film, about the value chain, hubs that you spoke about. Where we can see, your active contribution in putting up some pilots which can be showcased, or at least the idea of a potential, what we call a value chain at the village level. Your specific, I would say, the highlight of your talk has been around making the villages self-sufficient and building things around the village and using the technologies for connectivity, which is a great vision. And I wish you all the best for your own endeavor which you're planning, sir. Looking forward to stay in touch with you and connecting many others in the same space so that we can make this happen and take it forward. Thank you so much, and thanks to all the participants and all the people who have given their time for this particular session. And on that note, we could conclude this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Suresh. And thank
Jagdish sir has also mentioned that it's a very detailed presentation on the business process of Agri Value Chain. He also wants to say, Jagdish sir, he wants to convey the thanks.
Surely, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.